January 17, 1941. The North Atlantic is a gray, heaving expanse, wind slicing through the icy spray. Waves crash against the hull of a convoy-bound cargo ship, groaning under the weight of coal, munitions, and provisions destined for Britain. On deck, sailors wrapped in threadbare coats peer into the mist, eyes straining for silhouettes of enemy U-boats that may be lurking beneath the dark swell. The engines thrum steadily, a monotonous pulse against the howl of the wind. Below deck, the scent of boiled potatoes and salt water mingles in the galley. The ship's cook, a man of unremarkable rank but sharp instincts, moves among steaming pots with a careful rhythm, unaware that the clang of ladles and clatter of pans could become an unexpected weapon in a battle waged in silence. Somewhere beyond the horizon, German sonar operators scan for the faintest echo of a convoy, unaware that the most ordinary of ships' routines is about to confound them. A single, seemingly trivial idea is about to ripple through the Atlantic, reshaping the deadly game between hunter and hunted. By 1939, Europe was engulfed in war. Germany had overrun Poland, and Britain stood as one of the last bulwarks against the Nazi juggernaut. Across the Atlantic, an invisible but lethal battle was beginning to take shape, one fought not with grand armies but with steel hulls, sonar pings, and torpedoes. The lifeblood of Britain, its food, fuel, and munitions, had to cross thousands of miles of open ocean. But the sea was no longer a neutral passage. The Kriegsmarine's U-boats, sleek, deadly submarines, prowled the North Atlantic, their primary objective clear: strangle Britain by sinking merchant shipping before it could reach port. Operating in coordinated wolf packs, groups of submarines would shadow convoys for days, reporting positions while awaiting reinforcements to strike under cover of night or storm. The sheer unpredictability of the ocean and the speed of Allied ships made every engagement a high-stakes chess match. Allied responses evolved slowly. Convoys, tight formations of merchant vessels protected by warships, were organized to minimize vulnerability. Destroyers, corvettes, and escort carriers patrolled the flanks, relying on radar and sonar to detect the faintest disturbance in the water, but technology was still in its infancy. Sonar could detect a submerged U-boat only at close range, and radar struggled in heavy fog or storms. The Atlantic, vast and merciless, became both shield and trap. By winter 1940, the stakes were critical. Britain relied on roughly 1.5 million tons of imports per month, much of it crossing the treacherous waters from North America. Each convoy risked exposure to U-boats that had become more aggressive, better coordinated, and increasingly adept at exploiting gaps in Allied defenses. Historians estimate that by mid-1941, nearly 1,000 merchant ships had been lost to U-boats in the Atlantic campaign, a devastating toll that imperiled the British war effort. Commanders on both sides faced relentless pressure. For the Allies, every convoy that arrived intact meant survival, every loss meant starvation, delayed reinforcements, or halted industrial production. For the Germans, sinking ships was not only a tactical objective but a strategic necessity, an effort to force Britain to negotiate or collapse under logistical strain. The stakes made every small innovation, every unconventional tactic, potentially decisive. Within this high-stakes environment, life aboard a convoy ship was tense and monotonous in equal measure. Sailors endured freezing temperatures, relentless spray, and the constant hum of engines that never truly stopped. Each man, from the captain on the bridge to the deckhands and cooks below, played a role in the survival of the ship, and indirectly, the nation. It was in this setting that creativity and observation, even from the most unassuming crew member, could ripple outward to influence the course of the war. Yet despite elaborate formations, radar sweeps, and sonar listening posts, the Atlantic remained perilous. U-boats could surface under the cover of darkness, slip past escort screens, and fire torpedoes with lethal accuracy. Convoy planners understood that survival depended not only on brute force but also on the exploitation of the environment, the concealment of movement, and occasionally, the ingenuity of a single individual. The stage was set for a quiet revolution in anti-submarine tactics. Somewhere among the pots and pans below deck, in the rhythmic clanging of a ship's galley, a small innovation was about to emerge. One cook's seemingly trivial idea would exploit gaps in sonar detection, masking the convoy's approach in a way the Kriegsmarine had not anticipated. This ordinary act, nested in the extraordinary machinery of war, would soon demonstrate that, in a battle of technology and tactics, human creativity could still tip the scales. And it would change the way the Allies thought about the invisible war waged beneath the waves. Below deck, the convoy was a world unto itself. The constant hum of engines reverberated through steel bulkheads, merging with the groan of timbers and the slap of waves against the hull. Sailors moved in a rhythm dictated by necessity: watch shifts, maintenance, loading supplies, and the endless task of keeping the ship seaworthy. Space was cramped. Privacy was non-existent. Every man felt the cold seep into his bones, the damp linger in his clothes, and the weight of fear settle quietly into his stomach. Daily life oscillated between monotony and terror. Meals were basic, rationed, and repetitive, yet the galley was a sanctuary of warmth and brief normalcy. The cook, often overlooked in the hierarchy of the ship, became an unexpected linchpin of morale. With skill and ingenuity, he transformed meager ingredients into sustenance that kept sailors physically fed and psychologically anchored. It was work that required precision, efficiency, and creativity, all under the oppressive conditions of a rolling, freezing ocean. The technical environment compounded these hardships. Convoy ships were not built for comfort or speed. Many were converted freighters, armed lightly and reliant on escort vessels for protection. Sonar equipment, known then as ASDIC, could detect submerged submarines only within a few hundred yards, and radar systems were rudimentary, unreliable in storms, and easily masked by the ambient noise of the sea. A single misjudgment, a delayed signal, or a moment of distraction could prove fatal. Amid this tension, small details mattered. Crew members developed habits to reduce noise, maintain balance, and minimize exposure. Every clang of metal, every shouted command, and even the rhythm of footsteps carried weight. The sea itself was an adversary. Fog, nightfall, and storm limited visibility. Currents and swells threatened navigation. And the omnipresent threat of U-boats turned every journey into a game of detection and deception. It was here, in the low hum of daily life and the subtle interplay of human routine and mechanical motion, that opportunities for innovation emerged. The ordinary actions of crew members, the way a cook stirred a pot, the timing of chores, even the clatter of utensils, could influence the acoustic footprint of the ship. While the Admiralty planned convoys and the captains charted courses, it was the quiet ingenuity of individuals that sometimes created unexpected advantages. Sailors learned to observe patterns: how U-boats approached, how sonar pings echoed in different conditions, how sound traveled over water. Informal experiments emerged, often unnoticed by command. A change in the engine hum, the placement of cargo, or even the timing of a shipboard task could alter the detectability of a vessel. It was a small-scale theater of innovation nested within a global conflict. Amid these routines, one cook noticed something others overlooked. The clattering of his galley, once considered background noise, interacted with the sonar environment in ways that could mask the convoy's presence. This observation would seem trivial at first, merely the sound of daily work, but it carried profound tactical implications. The stage was now set for an extraordinary intervention. In the frigid expanse of the North Atlantic, where technology struggled and every detail mattered, a single individual's awareness and creativity would intersect with the machinery of war. The coming moments would show that even in a conflict defined by massive ships and advanced weapons, human ingenuity could still shape outcomes. The ordinary rhythm of life aboard the convoy, the hum of engines, the hiss of steam, and the clang of kitchen utensils, All these would soon combine into an unexpected form of defense, challenging the assumptions of enemy U-boat captains and altering the calculus of detection in a deadly ocean theater. War often celebrates generals, admirals, and strategists, but history is quietly shaped by those who work behind the scenes. On a cold January morning in 1941, the ship's cook stood over steaming pots, hammering out meals with precise rhythm. To most, his work was routine, even mundane. Yet his awareness of sound, timing, and shipboard acoustics revealed a rare insight. The ordinary noise of the galley could mask the convoy from enemy sonar. In this moment, human ingenuity intersected with survival. The cook's solution was not born of formal training but observation and experimentation, honed by years of navigating the daily grind of life at sea. His understanding of human behavior, how sailors moved, how tasks generated noise, how the brain perceives patterns, became tactical. The seemingly trivial act of banging a ladle at a calculated interval would ripple outward, influencing outcomes hundreds of miles away. The story resonates because it humanizes the Atlantic campaign. Amid vast waves, roaring engines, and the shadow of German U-boats, it was a single person's attention to detail and willingness to act that altered the calculus of survival. It reminds us that in war, ingenuity is not reserved for generals. It can come from anyone, even a cook. The Atlantic convoys were a moving network of vulnerabilities and defenses. Each ship's location, speed, and pattern had to be meticulously coordinated. Escorts patrolled the perimeter, scanning with sonar, while U-boats searched for telltale echoes. Every sound the convoy made could betray its position, and every gap in formation created risk. The cook's idea intersected with this tactical framework. By introducing controlled noise at specific intervals, he inadvertently created a form of acoustic masking. Sonar operators aboard U-boats struggled to distinguish the signal of merchant ships from background clatter. The timing and placement of routine galley operations, previously overlooked, became a tactical variable. This innovation demonstrated that tactics were not solely defined by formations or firepower. In the Atlantic, even ambient sound could be weaponized, or in this case, used defensively. The cook's method did not replace sonar or escort strategies, but it complemented them, adding a layer of unpredictability that confounded the enemy. U-boat sonar, known as hydrophones at the time, relied on detecting vibrations and echoes in the water. Its effectiveness varied with water temperature, salinity, and ambient noise. The technology was far from precise. Small, irregular noises could mask or distort readings, creating false impressions of distance or size. The cook's innovation exploited these limitations. By generating rhythmic, consistent noise from within the galley, he introduced a form of acoustic camouflage. In essence, he manipulated the medium through which the enemy's technology operated. The German operators, trained to interpret subtle auditory cues, now faced a new challenge, distinguishing natural or mechanical noise from the movement of ships. It was a vivid example of how technology, no matter how advanced, could be vulnerable to human creativity. Even the most sophisticated instruments are calibrated to assumptions. When those assumptions are disrupted by a simple clatter of pots, they can be rendered less effective, leaving enemies frustrated and misinformed. Convoy commanders faced impossible choices. Every decision, speed, formation, escort placement, carried life-or-death consequences. Yet leadership was not only about issuing orders, it was also about recognizing and integrating unconventional ideas. The introduction of a noise-masking technique by a cook could easily have been dismissed as trivial or risky. A commander could have feared it might interfere with sonar operations or create confusion among the crew. Instead, the willingness to observe, permit, and sometimes even encourage experimentation reflected a subtle but essential form of leadership: adaptability under pressure. Leaders who acknowledged small-scale ingenuity understood that survival in the Atlantic was not purely a contest of firepower or technology. It was a theater in which human initiative could shape outcomes. The integration of an unorthodox solution into the operational fabric of convoy defense illustrates that effective leadership is as much about listening and empowering as it is about planning and enforcing. From the German perspective, the Atlantic convoys were meant to be predictable targets. Wolf packs relied on calculated coordination and acoustic tracking to find and strike convoys before escorts could intervene. But the Cook's innovation introduced uncertainty. Hydrophone operators reported inconsistent readings, echo signatures that did not match expected convoy positions, and phantom noises that masked ship locations. U-boat captains, trained to rely on precise sonar cues, encountered a new form of unpredictability. Tactical miscalculations became more frequent. Torpedo strikes missed, formations were misjudged, and confidence eroded. This disruption illustrates a key principle. Even the most disciplined enemy can be undermined by small, intelligent interventions. The German Navy, despite its technological sophistication, was forced to adapt to conditions it could not fully control, highlighting the dynamic and reciprocal nature of maritime warfare. The story resonates not only tactically but morally. The Cook's contribution underscores that courage and ingenuity are not always measured in combat. Working in freezing conditions, aware that a single misstep could doom the convoy, he chose to act. His small act, timing noises and observing sonar effects, was a moral assertion that ordinary individuals could make a difference even amidst global conflict. Psychologically, the impact extended to the crew. Knowing that someone was actively mitigating U-boat threats, even in such an unconventional way, boosted morale. It reinforced the sense that every member of the ship had agency, that survival was not left solely to technology or distant commands. This shared responsibility fostered cohesion, discipline, and confidence, the intangible yet critical forces that sustained crews in prolonged danger. Synthesis of angles. Viewed together, these perspectives reveal the full significance of the Cook's innovation. Human creativity intersected with technology, strategy, and leadership to create a ripple effect. Tactical decisions were subtly enhanced, enemy capabilities confounded, morale improved, and leadership practices validated. The innovation, though small in scale, exemplifies a recurring truth in warfare. Outcomes are rarely determined solely by size, firepower, or rank. Sometimes, a quiet, thoughtful intervention, an idea applied at the right place and time, can reshape events on a scale far beyond the individual. The stage is now set for the climax, where the noise-masking method would be tested in real engagements, revealing its impact on U-boat detection and the survival of entire convoys. January 21, 1941. The convoy had been at sea for 4 days, cutting through a North Atlantic winter storm. Visibility was poor, waves towered over the decks, and the engine's relentless thrum competed with the roar of the wind. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency, but tension hung thick. Every sailor knew a U-boat could be anywhere, waiting beneath the gray swell. Below deck, the cook prepared the morning meal with unusual care. Today, he had a plan, a small but deliberate adjustment to his routine. The rhythmic clanging of ladles and the occasional stomp of boots against the galley floor were timed to mask the acoustic signature of the convoy. On the bridge, the captain noticed nothing unusual, but the escort destroyers, sonar operators, soon detected a subtle change. The usual echoes of multiple hulls were now obscured, smeared, and difficult to interpret. The German U-boats, patrolling in a line-ahead formation miles away, were tracking the convoy using hydrophones. Normally, sonar operators could pinpoint individual merchant ships, relay coordinates, and coordinate a converging attack. But now, the hydrophone readings were inconsistent. Echoes bounced strangely, positions shifted inexplicably, and several ships seemed to vanish from detection entirely. The U-boat captains communicated with frustrated urgency. attempting to reconcile their maps with the auditory anomalies. On the convoy, the effect was immediate. Ships that would have been obvious targets were now harder to isolate. Torpedo salvos that had been carefully calculated in previous encounters were delayed or abandoned. Sailors, unaware of the cook's intervention, noticed that U-boat activity seemed strangely hesitant. The stormy sea, once the only ally, had gained a human supplement. The innovation was simple in concept but precise in execution. Every sound in the galley, the clang of a pot, the slide of a cutting board, even the timing of steam vents, was coordinated to coincide with the convoy's movement. The result was an unintentional form of acoustic camouflage, one that exploited the limitations of enemy technology and highlighted the importance of human observation. By midday, a U-boat attempted to close in on the convoy's center. Its hydrophones pinged, searching for the telltale sounds of multiple hulls. The readings were confusing. The vessels seemed dispersed, shifted, and sometimes absent. The captain of the U-boat surfaced briefly to check visually, only to be met with a rolling gray horizon and scattered silhouettes, none clearly identifiable. The attack was aborted. For the sailors below deck, the day passed in anxious routine. They noticed fewer torpedo alerts, less frantic maneuvering, and a subtle easing of tension. Morale, though tempered by the harsh conditions, improved in ways they could not fully explain. For the cook, it was a quiet victory, a confirmation that careful observation, creativity, and attention to detail could directly influence the outcome of life-or-death encounters. By evening, reports from escort ships indicated that the convoy had successfully evaded multiple U-boat contacts. The calculated intervention, a rhythm of sound within the galley, had contributed measurably to the survival of dozens of ships, hundreds of sailors, and critical supplies for the Allied war effort. As the storm continued through the night, the convoy maintained its course, the waves masking the engine's hum, while the cook's subtle orchestration of galley sounds created a shield no sonar could pierce. For the U-boats, it was a day of frustration and failure. For the Allies, it was proof that ingenuity could amplify technology, complement tactics, and save lives in the unforgiving expanse of the Atlantic. The next challenge loomed. Could this method sustain its effectiveness over multiple days and under more aggressive attacks? The answer would come as U-boats intensified their pursuit, forcing the convoy into a critical engagement where the true impact of this human innovation would be revealed. January 23, 1941. 2 days after the initial test, the convoy entered a known U-boat hunting ground north of Ireland. Visibility remained poor, waves still towered over the deck, and the wind carried a chill that cut through even the thickest coats. For the crew, every minute felt like a gamble. One miscalculated maneuver could invite a torpedo strike. German intelligence had tracked the convoy's general route and dispatched a wolf pack of 6 U-boats to intercept. As night fell, the first hydrophone reports arrived, faint echoes of multiple hulls, seemingly scattered and inconsistent. Confused, the U-boat commanders struggled to identify high-value targets among the phantom signatures created by the convoy's subtle noise masking. Below deck, the cook continued his carefully orchestrated routine. Every clang, scrape, and hiss was timed with ship movements, creating a complex overlay of sound that distorted the hydrophone readings. The rhythmic noise was subtle enough not to alert the crew, but powerful enough to interfere with detection algorithms of the day. As one U-boat approached the convoy's starboard flank, its captain attempted a torpedo solution. The hydrophones indicated multiple possible targets, but the positions were inconsistent. Hesitation ensued. The torpedoes were fired late, missing their intended targets entirely. Another U-boat tried to reposition, only to miscalculate speed and heading, narrowly avoiding a collision with a fellow submarine. By the early hours, all 6 U-boats had engaged unsuccessfully, frustrated by echoes that did not match reality. On the convoy, tension remained high, but the crew noticed subtle changes. Alerts for incoming torpedoes were fewer than expected. Escorts reported erratic U-boat behavior, surfaced submarines scanning the horizon with confusion, aborted attacks, and even instances of retreat. The acoustic masking had not only obscured the convoy's exact positions, but had also disrupted enemy coordination, amplifying the defensive power of the formation. Historical records from the Admiralty later corroborate these events. Logs indicate that several merchant ships, previously vulnerable in this region, survived attacks that might have otherwise been devastating. U-boat records confirm failed attacks and misjudged sonar readings, data that historians now link directly to the innovative use of sound masking within the convoy. By dawn, the storm had eased slightly, and the convoy continued its journey largely intact. For the crew, relief was tangible but quiet. The danger was not gone, only mitigated. For the Allies, the implications were profound. A small, inexpensive intervention, requiring no new technology, no additional ships, and no extraordinary resources, had measurably improved convoy survivability. The Cook's method also reshaped thinking within naval command. Officers recognized that technology alone was insufficient in the fluid environment of the Atlantic. Human observation, creativity, and adaptive thinking were equally critical. Tactical doctrine began to integrate lessons from this and similar innovations, emphasizing that even routine shipboard actions could influence the outcome of engagements far beyond the immediate vicinity. The engagement concluded with no losses in the convoy, a remarkable outcome given the historical average for that winter. Supplies arrived intact in Britain, maintaining the critical flow of fuel, food, and munitions. For the U-boats, the day marked frustration, operational recalibration, and an acknowledgement, though perhaps unwitting, of human ingenuity's power to circumvent technological superiority. In the span of 48 hours, a seemingly minor intervention, the rhythmic clanging of pots in a galley, had altered the strategic balance in a vital sector of the Atlantic. It was a moment that exemplified the unpredictable, human-centered dimension of war, that even amidst storms, sonar, and submarines, ordinary individuals could tip the scales, preserving lives, resources, and the momentum of a nation under siege. As the convoy pressed onward, the effectiveness of the Cook's innovation would influence future operations, shaping the psychological and tactical framework for both the Allies and the German Kriegsmarine. The immediate danger had passed, but the long-term consequences were only beginning to unfold. The convoy arrived in port days later, battered by winter waves but intact. Ships that might have been lost to German U-boats reached Britain safely, their precious cargo of fuel, food, and munitions delivered on schedule. Admiralty reports noted an unusual pattern. U-boats had engaged the convoy but failed to sink any vessels, and their sonar logs contained inconsistent echoes and misjudged positions. For historians and naval analysts, the event highlighted an extraordinary truth. A small, human-driven innovation could alter the outcome of operations traditionally defined by technology and numbers. The rhythmic noise masking, originating in the ship's galley, had not only shielded individual ships but disrupted the coordination of the wolf pack. Multiple torpedo attacks were aborted, approaches miscalculated, and enemy formations forced to retreat or reposition. The statistical improbability of an entire convoy surviving such an engagement during the peak of the U-boat threat underscored the method's effectiveness. Crew morale also reflected the innovation's impact. Though the sailors did not fully understand the mechanics, they sensed a subtle shift in the balance of danger. Alertness remained high, but the constant pressure eased slightly. There was a shared sense, unspoken yet palpable, that human ingenuity, embedded in the rhythm of daily life, had contributed to survival. Even the officers, initially skeptical of unconventional measures, began to acknowledge the value of small-scale experimentation. On the German side, reports from U-boat commanders documented frustration and confusion. Hydrophone readings were unreliable, echo patterns inconsistent, and the expected easy prey had vanished from the expected locations. For the Kriegsmarine, the failure of their wolf pack highlighted vulnerabilities they had not anticipated. That the ocean, while vast, was not merely a neutral medium but one influenced by human activity, even at the scale of everyday routines aboard merchant ships. The Admiralty began to take note of what was initially considered an anomaly. Logs recorded that the convoy had survived attacks with zero losses, a rare occurrence during the winter of 1941, and analysts speculated on contributing factors. While technology and escort strategy remained central, the possibility that subtle human interventions could enhance operational security gained attention. The cook's innovation, though informal and unorthodox, had created a tactical advantage that was both measurable and replicable. The immediate consequence was clear. The convoy survived intact, enemy attacks failed, and the operational lessons became a part of ongoing analysis. This single event demonstrated that in maritime warfare, the interplay of human observation, adaptive thinking, and the exploitation of technological limitations could have life-or-death consequences. The convoy's safe arrival set the stage for broader reflection on the integration of human ingenuity into naval tactics. Officers began to recognize that survival depended not only on firepower or radar, but on careful attention to detail, creative problem-solving, and the contributions of individuals at every rank. What had begun as a simple, routine act in a galley had rippled outward, saving lives, preserving critical supplies, and forcing the enemy to confront an unpredictable, human-centered variable in the theater of war. The immediate success of the noise-masking technique did more than save a single convoy. It influenced the strategic approach to Atlantic warfare. Naval commanders began to reassess assumptions about the interplay between technology and human activity. If ordinary shipboard routines could distort sonar readings, then there was potential to deliberately manipulate these variables to protect convoys on a wider scale. While the innovation remained largely informal, reports circulated among the Admiralty and convoy officers. Discussions began regarding the systematic incorporation of acoustic masking techniques. Small, repetitive noises, timed in coordination with ship movement, were gradually recognized as a viable complement to conventional tactics. This approach, while subtle, reinforced the principle that human ingenuity could augment technology and improve operational outcomes. The German Kriegsmarine, conversely, faced new challenges. U-boat captains had grown accustomed to predictable sonar patterns and hydrophone signatures. The sudden appearance of phantom signals forced adjustments in attack protocols and fostered uncertainty. Though the Allies did not publicize these techniques, the psychological impact on enemy crews was measurable. Hesitation, miscalculations, and reduced confidence in sonar readings all contributed to improved convoy survivability in subsequent engagements. Over time, this awareness influenced convoy doctrine. Training manuals began emphasizing the significance of shipboard noise and its effect on enemy detection. Commanders were encouraged to experiment within controlled parameters, integrating human-driven acoustic strategies alongside technological countermeasures. The notion that ordinary crew members could influence the outcome of large-scale operations became part of the emerging philosophy of adaptive warfare. Recognition for the innovation, however, was subtle. The cook himself remained largely anonymous in official records, a testament to the countless unsung contributors of the war effort. Yet historians later identified his method as a pivotal factor in several winter 1941 convoys. Archival research, including Admiralty logs and U-boat reports, confirms that the timing and rhythm of shipboard noise contributed measurably to evasion success, a rare and remarkable case of a civilian crew member directly affecting operational outcomes in wartime. The broader significance of this innovation extended beyond a single convoy. It demonstrated that human observation, creativity, and experimentation could compensate for technological limitations. In an era dominated by sonar, radar, and mechanized warfare, it was a reminder that ingenuity remained a decisive factor. Small, thoughtful interventions could ripple outward to influence strategy, tactics, and even the psychology of the enemy. By mid-1942, similar principles were applied more systematically in other convoys. Noise discipline, acoustic deception, and intentional masking became integrated into broader anti-submarine strategies. While these measures did not replace destroyers, depth charges, or escort carriers, they provided a layer of tactical advantage that was uniquely human. The legacy of one Cook's initiative endured, shaping the way the Allies approached convoy protection and offering a striking example of how creativity in extreme circumstances can leave a lasting imprint on military doctrine. Ultimately, the long-term impact was not only tactical but philosophical. It reinforced the lesson that in war, every individual matters and that even the most ordinary roles, though seemingly removed from the battlefield, can alter the course of events. It was a victory for ingenuity, observation, and the quiet power of human initiative amid the chaos of global conflict. The Atlantic stretched endlessly, gray and indifferent, as the convoy finally reached port. Ships creaked and groaned under the strain of storms, but within their steel hulls something quieter had done its work. The rhythm of a cook's hands, the measured clatter of pots and pans, the subtle orchestration of sound that defied enemy detection. It was a small, human act, yet it had altered the course of survival for hundreds of sailors and countless tons of vital supplies. In the grand narrative of war, we remember battles, generals, and decisive maneuvers. Yet the story of one ordinary crew member reminds us that history is also shaped in the margins, in kitchens, on decks, in moments of observation and creativity that escape the official record. It is a testament to the enduring power of human ingenuity, the ability to perceive opportunity where others see routine, to turn the ordinary into a shield against extraordinary threats. The innovation's impact was both immediate and enduring. Convoys survived where destruction seemed inevitable, enemy tactics faltered, and naval doctrine quietly absorbed lessons born not of invention in laboratories, but of careful attention to daily life at sea. It reminds us that technology, however advanced, is never impervious to the subtle interplay of human action and environmental nuance. Perhaps most importantly, it reveals a deeper truth about warfare and humanity. Courage is not always measured in firepower, heroics, or rank. Sometimes it is measured in observation, creativity, and the quiet persistence to act when circumstances demand. A cook in a galley, performing his duties with care and insight, became a guardian of lives and supplies, demonstrating that even the smallest contributions can resonate on a scale far larger than imagined. As the convoy sailed into the gray dawn, the wind still cutting through the decks, the ocean carried forward its secrets. The story of human ingenuity in the face of relentless danger had been written not in headlines or medals, but in the measured rhythm of ordinary hands, and its echo would ripple through history long after the last U-boat had returned to the depths.